Hi guys, Courtney Kidd here from the Floyd County School of Innovation. I'm here to talk to you all today about my ARI grant case studies that captivate. Throughout the course of my presentation, I'm going to talk to you all a little bit about the inspiration behind my project, how I came up with the idea. And basically we're going to talk more long-term goals for the students. What am I trying to achieve from this and how am I going to see if they're actually gaining and learning content from this? So my inspiration from the project, if you can, I'll say thank you, COVID, for this. But a big emphasis and a big concern of mine since last year, at the end of the year when we were out, has been just the concern of engaging my students in remote learning. It's not something that I've never really had to have a big concern about. I've used virtual labs before. We've ran probeware before, but it's never been just on the table that I may be teaching, a hybrid model or a completely remote model. So when I started to plan for my school year, one of the things that just really stood out to me and struck me is I realized I was going to have to reinvent things for my kids. The stress didn't need to be on them, how is school going to change? I just kind of needed to reformat and tweak what I was doing and just give them a different way to learn as much as possible. So what I came up with was the idea of using case studies. And, that kind of runs to my purpose, a direct connection. A lot of my purpose being drawn from the next generation science standards, but also just the simple fact that, I'm a part of a CTE pathway school now. So not only am I teaching biology, but I also teach engineering courses. So my big focus and the big emphasis, I want my kids to be able to take real world problems, and I want them to be able to evaluate it. And I want them to think about, what kind of fixes there are for those problems. And even if there's not necessarily a fix, what can we do to make certain situations better? I want my students to have confidence in interpreting, problems rather than just data sets all the time. I think a lot of times we focus so much on, can they read a data set from a lab? Can they interpret graphs on the ACT? But if we ever really stopped, and I know for me, maybe not as much as I should have, but have I ever really stopped to say, you're our future leaders. You are the students who have to make a difference in the future. So, what problems or what ideas do you have that we can expand into science and engineering? So here's what I came up with. When I started designing this ARI grant, the first thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to find some unique case studies that I thought a lot of my students would thrive on. Here at FCSI, I do have pretty split groups of male-female population, but I have noticed a lot of times that my girls are more drawn to the life science already. My boys are more drawn toward the engineering aspect. So what I was looking for was something that would merge the two. So what I found was actually this case study set from a place called scienceoutside.org. And the reason I chose this one and the reason I became invested in it is when I started looking at the topics, one of the things that I noticed was they did a lot of studies with animals and a lot of planetary work. But even the populations that they studied, buffalo, white-tailed deer, bald eagles, I thought, those are things that a lot of my boys are interested in because a lot of my boys hunt. So anything that I can do to bridge that content and bring my students in and have them be engaged, that was something that I was willing to reach out there for. Other case studies on there are population case studies, diseases in animal units, things like that. So there's several different ways I can branch those topics. I also purchased 2 materials, and you'll notice in the PowerPoint, both of them say they're engineering case studies. I was drawn to those because I think they're going to be more illustrative in the fact that I want the kids to know that there are careers out there now that didn't even exist 5 years ago. I want them to know that engineering and biotechnology are things that exist in, most medical fields now. Even law situations where they're doing case studies. I just want them to see all of these relevant links between real life problems and, solving those problems. What's out there and what's available? What do they have to offer? And then the last component of this was something that I thought I may need to actually complete some of these case studies. I did a NSTA ebook subscription for 7 different class titles, so all of the students will have access to it through my class. But the purchase was for different life science titles that kind of directly mesh with the other case studies. And what's cool about these ebooks is they're not just regular ebooks like textbooks. They're interactive class titles. They have parts where the students can manipulate images. They have sections where there are short clips the students can watch. The illustrations are amazing. So it really kind of fully immerses them in the content. My plan of action, like how I actually intend to include the students, I want to use PBL strategies so they can do what I'm going to classify as experience learning for this project. Basically, they're going to be presented with different open-ended problems, and together in some instances, so collaboratively, and then sometimes as individuals, I'm going to ask them to analyze those problems and create solutions, okay? And through that, one of the things that I think I'm going to be able to address is not only clear communication between peers, but also the fact that there's not always necessarily a right or a wrong answer. And just looking at that idea of how can we bring different ideas together and maybe even create something stronger. With some of the courses being CTE courses and engineering courses, I do want to use these case studies and the interactive text. Even if we are face-to-face or virtual, both are completely applicable. Really easy to set up like group chats via Zoom or Google Meet, but also just that idea that when they are able to communicate and collaborate face-to-face, we have some awesome group projects and presentations that can come out of this. I intend to formatively assess with these because I am going to use them as learning targets rather than just complete like assessment objectives. I want to teach the students how to do technical writing, want to use like CER strategies to help them develop arguments. So I don't want them to just say, you know, my solution is the only answer or my solution is the best answer. More importantly, I want them to say, my solution is the answer because I want them to be able to give me that support and that reasoning behind their ideas. And then some of the benchmarks and some of the work that I can display, I can do video presentations, I can do virtual calls with the students. Once we are back face-to-face, it's an opportunity for them at open house to present to the public. So a lot of different ways that we can use these and we can engage. My hope from this, though, is truly that they realize, you know, they are problem solvers and they are intuitive enough and they are the next generation. This is their opportunity to solve problems. So this is my running idea on how I want to reinvent my classes so I can work from both a virtual and remote setting. If you're curious about any of the case studies or the way that I intend to use them more specifically, please reach out to me via email, however you all need to. I'd be more than happy to collaborate with you all. But I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I hope I will have awesome news and reports to share with you all in the spring. Thank you.